Unfortunately, the rolls across this country are filled with the names of people who have moved, died, or are not U.S. citizens.
This time, the chair recognizes Ms. Roman for 5 minutes.
Good morning, Chairman Butterfield, Ranking Member Stile, and members of the committee. Thank you very much for this opportunity to testify. I'm president of the American Constitutional Rights Union and ACRU Action Fund. It is important that we address the duty to ensure access to the ballot box while also protecting the integrity of the voting process. Put bluntly, we should all agree to work together to make it easy to vote and hard to cheat. Some of my remarks today refer to an article in the Yale Law and Policy Review called "The Other Voting Right: Protecting Every Citizen's Vote by Safeguarding the Integrity of the Ballot Box." This article was co-written by a colleague of mine, former Ohio Secretary of State and U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations Human Rights Commission, J. Kenneth Blackwell. Unfortunately, his schedule did not permit him to be with us today. Our country has spent many decades advancing the rights of citizens to fully participate in our republic. And this, unfortunately, has always been a fight between the political factions. First, we fought quite literally for freedom for all Americans. And after the Civil War, a war in which my great-great-grandfather was a Union soldier who was wounded and imprisoned at the notorious Andersonville prison camp, the 14th Amendment to the Constitution was ratified, giving citizenship to persons born or naturalized in the United States, including former slaves. This was passed by Republicans with no Democrat support. For Black American men, the right to vote came with passage of the 15th Amendment in 1870. The amendment passed with Republicans supporting the right to vote and Democrats blocking that right. Despite the amendment, Black Americans endured violence, intimidation, literacy tests, poll taxes, designed to block them from voting. These actions were committed mostly by Southern Democrats. In 1920, women were finally granted the right to vote with the 19th Amendment, and that was pushed and passed by a Republican-led House and Senate. As Americans, sometimes we have fought each other on this, but we should be proud that we fought hard for freedom and for access, and now it's time to fight for voting integrity to protect every person's vote from being diluted by fraudulent votes. Today, we'll talk about voter rolls that must be kept updated according to federal law and voter identification, which is a popular solution used throughout the world. The National Voter Registration Act, or motor voter law, makes it easy to register people to vote, but it also mandates procedures to update the registrations from those who have moved or died to ensure accurate rolls. Unfortunately, the rolls across this country are filled with the names of people who have moved, died, or are not U.S. citizens. Over the years, my organization has brought lawsuits against counties which have ignored the law. In one county, ACRU found that not one single person that had moved or died had been removed from voter rolls for 3 years. Some people have tried to assert that clean voter rolls are racist. But moving people from the voter rolls who have moved or died has nothing to do with the ethnicity of the voter. As for voter ID, it seems to me completely unnecessary to make the case for something so common sense and used throughout the world. In fact, polls repeatedly show that Americans of all ethnicities support voter ID, and it is in many state laws. I quote the Yale Law and Policy Review article. States have significant authority under the Constitution to protect legal votes from illegitimate dilution. In 2008, a plurality opinion of the Supreme Court asserted that if a state's burdens on voting are merely inconvenient, and if its restrictions are non-severe and non-discriminatory, those burdens are evaluated under a much less demanding, important regulatory interest standard that is deferential to policymakers' judgment. Some members of Congress have maintained that requiring voter ID is racist, yet members of Congress voted for the Affordable Care Act. This legislation forces every single American to obtain health insurance. Compared to receiving free identification from the government, the process of purchasing medical insurance is complicated, expensive, and often daunting. Congress also added a financial penalty for those who didn't obtain insurance, increasing that burden. A few weeks ago, Black leaders signed a letter urging members of Congress to de-escalate their rhetoric, equating voting integrity with Jim Crow. One signer of this letter, Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson, the first Black Lieutenant Governor of North Carolina, testified before the House Judiciary Committee saying, "The notion that Black people must be protected from a free ID to secure their vote is not just insane, it is insulting." In conclusion, the rights of American citizens to vote and to also have their vote protected from dilution by fraudulent votes is codified into federal and state laws, supported by Americans, and grounded in common sense. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today.
Thank you, Ms. Roman, for your testimony. That concludes the